This week on Women Who Rise, I'm joined by entrepreneur, speaker, and pro insight CEO, Justin Stoddard. We talk about why success isn't really about leads, transactions, or working harder. It's about relationships, trust, and building something that actually lasts. Justin shares how shifting from chasing business to building partnerships completely changed the trajectory of his life, and how the biggest growth often comes from introspection, not just action. If you've ever felt like you're working hard but not building what you really want, this conversation will make you think bigger. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Women Who Rise. I'm your host, Heather Mansy. Today, I'm joined by Justin Stoddard, entrepreneur, speaker, author, and the CEO and co-founder of Pro Insight, a company dedicated to helping professionals build relationship-driven businesses that have real, lasting value. Justin is known for his work around the upstream model, teaching leaders how to grow through trust, strategic partnerships, and intentional connection rather than chasing transactions. After building successful companies in real estate, development, and the title industry, he now travels the country, speaking and coaching on how to create businesses that can scale, sell, and truly make an impact. Justin's philosophy goes far beyond business, focusing on introspection, purpose, and the idea that the way we build our relationships ultimately shapes the way we build our lives. Justin, welcome to the show.
Heather, so good to be with you today. Thanks for the invite. I've missed spending time with you, so this is a perfect opportunity for us to catch up and hopefully share some things of value to your amazing audience.
Thank you so much. And yes, I have missed you as well. It is wonderful to have collaborated with you in the past. So I am so excited for this interview. Well, let's just jump right in. You often talk about the power of relationships and the idea that trust is the real currency in business. When you think back to your earliest work experiences, where did you first start to understand that success wasn't about transactions, but about connection?
It takes me back to my days as a luxury home builder. In that era of my life, I was in my mid-20s and building $1 million homes, which for that time frame was a really big home in that part of the country. And so it was not something that you could just necessarily go acquire through an online lead platform. Like, people weren't searching for a builder to build their dream home from anywhere else other than through trusted sources. And I think maybe that's a great indicator for all of us that our ideal business, the ideal clients that we want, are typically going to get to us through relationships that we either have or will cultivate in the future.
Love that so much. And it is very telling, isn't it? In the day of social media where TikTok is the new, business white pages, it's interesting because it really is about that, 6 degrees of separation. It really is about that connectivity. Because even if it is on social media, people are finding, I just had someone reach out to me through a friend on social media, because we are social beings at heart. So this question, next question was really about the multiple businesses that you've built, and the fact that you now teach others how to think upstream. And I know you've also written a book about that, but that kind of perspective usually comes from maybe a defining shift, in addition to maybe challenges when you were in any one of the careers that you've had. Can you talk a little bit about maybe a challenging time and how you were able to shift in the moment, and then how that has been able to reflect on either your coaching or your writings?
I think kind of tying into this, the previous question with this question, which is, I think that there will come a point in everybody's career where they realize that they want to achieve more, and the methodologies by which they've learned and are currently implementing actually aren't going to get them there. It's kind of like this road actually doesn't lead to that location. You actually have to do something. You have to take an off ramp or an on ramp. Like you've got to do something different. And I remember again being in the home building business. In fact, I'll give you a couple examples. One was when I was in the home building business. Again, at that stage where I'm in my mid 20s, and I looked around at my personal sphere, and I think a lot of your audience likely will be real estate agent professionals. You've been at a spot where you've looked at the people that you know, and you say, even if every one of them gave me referrals or tried their very best to give me referrals, it's still not consistent with my ambition. Like it's not going to get me there. I can see it, right?
Yes.
And so at that point, kind of again, bridging together the two questions, it's typically a model and a series of relationships that open up that next door, right? So again, for me, the business that I was referencing earlier, which was my custom home business, I didn't have the experience in life, the network around me to be able to really reach the goals that I'd set. I was doing okay, but I wanted more, right? I was ambitious. And so then I began looking out at like these local networking chapters, signed up for one, created some nice friendships there. But that group also didn't have the influence that I needed them to have in order to achieve my goals. And I started to think about how opportunities come about. And I had this epiphany that in a society, right, there are professionals who are serving our next ideal client right now. Like they're serving them. They have a relationship with them. They've built trust over time. And we actually want those clients to be our next client. So instead of out prospecting to the whole world, right, or trying to advertise to the whole world, if we just built a relationship with those professionals who already have a relationship with the people that we want to serve next in such a way that it serves the professional who's currently serving them, we would probably get a free pass to introduction after introduction to those clients that we want. I'll give you an example. As a high-end home builder, I realized that interior designers and architectural designers were actively serving people prior to them, those clients choosing a builder, right? And they were working on them to figure out what home they wanted to build, right? Natural. Well, those two professionals are oftentimes heavily solicited by the building industry because they know that they're upstream from a building transaction. And so it's not a matter of just identifying those upstream partners, but it's also a matter of finding a way to be authentically valuable to the client process of those other professionals. A more specific example.
So good. I
identified an architectural designer who I sat down with him. Now, keep in mind that I learned this conversation because the first conversations I had with architectural designers fell flat. In other words, I showed up with a stack of business cards saying, hey, will you refer me, or like, do you have any homes that I can bid on? And I quickly, I'm sure those business cards got filed away in the trash can after I left, right? Because I was there to get something. Well, I learned the hard way that I shouldn't show up to get. But if I showed up to say, instead, tell me about your business, tell me about what you're trying to accomplish, how might I position myself to get you what you want, right? Now, all of a sudden, that architect doesn't see me as just simply a leech there to get something from him, but as someone who can give him value. So, for example, an invitation to a land developer that could introduce that architectural designer to his ideal clients would then make him want to introduce me, right? It's this game of strategy. And so I began to do that. And as a result, I realized that I could actually have everything I want in this life, right? As we've heard before, if I can help enough other people get what they want, especially if it's the people who are positioned in the marketplace just upstream from me. And so I set out on a mission to say, these people can feed me all day long, my ideal clients. How can I make their life better? How can I make their business better? And in so doing, the business started to flow to a point that it was more than enough.
Fantastic. I mean, so much good stuff to unpack there. I mean, first of all, obviously you're alluding to Pro Insight, and I've been fortunate enough to have one-on-one meetings with you about it. It is an extraordinary concept, and like you said, again with the book as well, this upstream model, the fact that there are these, and I think we all recognize in business there are upstream relationships that we need to go and get, that we need to go figure that out. But I really loved kind of that wisdom bomb that you dropped of, don't show up to get, but to give. And I also wrote collab, like let's be collaborators in this marketplace. And if you look at, realtors, it's going to be maybe investment specialists or it's lenders or what have you. And in fact, it could even be home inspectors and other things where there's so many businesses actually that are kind of satellite to a real estate professional, but this goes to any sort of business relationship or any sort of business, I think, in the world is just this recognition, you can't really show up to give to get something and to be like a taker. You have to be also willing to either collaborate or provide something that is of value or service. And then, yes, I love the idea that you are in that process of starting a conversation and a relationship all on its own. And that relationship all on its own is that thing where someone can say, you know what, I know a great whatever that is, plumber, roofer, whatever, because I actually do have a good relationship with them. And yes, we collaborate. But it's because I've got to know that person and their business and their professionalism, and they've made happy clients out of my clients and all of that. And it does, in fact, it brings so much value back home to us, doesn't it? Where we get to go, now I've provided multiple streams of value to my clients. And I am more of a one-stop shop and someone that they can rely on for other trusted sources of service, because it's so hard. If you think just from the customer perspective, what are you supposed to all go on Angie's list or, whatever for like there's not a version of that for everything. How do you find a trusted industry professional for, the various types of things that you need? Can you talk a little bit about that, Pro Insight and just where and within what industries it's serving and existing? Because I would love for our audience to know more about this.
Yeah, you bet. And I appreciate that. I think the problem that we set out to solve at Pro Insight is that, in particular, real estate agents tend to be or feel like they're invited to a buffet. They bring the food and everybody else brings a fork. And they're spending, right, significant amounts of time and resources in order to bring a client to the closing table. And at that point and moving forward, there are at least 20 other professionals who go to work because that real estate agent did all of the heavy lift to get them there. That's why there are so many people circling in and out of real estate offices. They're there doing CE classes, is because they all believe that the real estate agent is going to bring the food to the buffet and they're there with their fork. Now, what's very common, and you can probably relate to this, Heather, if I ask you how many in any given week, how many professional referrals you give out to other companies, what would you say that would be? A dozen? Dozens?
How many?
Right?
First of all, how many companies? It's probably, certainly, I would say 20 to 30 companies or 20 to 25. And it is constant. I mean, we're probably giving out 5 to 10 a day. Between, one client is going to need 2 to 3 professionals immediately, maybe actually 4 immediately. They need title, they need lending, they need an inspector. And then immediately after that, they need probably additional inspection follow-up. So they'll need electricians, roofers, foundation specialists, try to keep count here. And then, right, and it's not unlike us to bring in, 3 to 5 for each inspection. So now we're here. And then before this is all over, they'll need an escrow officer. They're going to need a home warranty company. They're going to need, they're going to need maybe some additional repair people, depending on what's occurring with that. And then after that, we've got a gift basket company. We've got our signage company. We've got our signage and lockbox company. And then, of course, I've got my photographer. So if they had a listing with us, for example, video editors. And by the way, I'm employing 2 or 3 others. What did I just go through? Like 23, and that's one client. I just employed 20. Yeah, I'm kind of woo, but yeah, I've never really sat and counted them, but that was no joke. Yeah, we're talking about 15 to 23 professionals per client that I specifically refer, and I have a team of 18 agents. So this is happening at scale.
So the question then isn't, is that referral flow from you out to those professionals versus coming in? It's not, is it lopsided? It's how lopsided is it, right? And in most cases, it's drastically lopsided. Like it's like, if you ask how many professional referrals did you receive this year, most people are like, right? And they can maybe think of a couple, right? Now, sometimes people have tight lending partners where that's a little better, but still, to the amount of professionals that we are helping support, all of the marketing and lead gen cost is on our shoulders, right? It's like, wait, what happened here? And so what we set out to, and it's not just real estate agents that feel that way. By the way, we have financial advisors who oftentimes feel that way. Tax professionals feel that way, right? Because they're giving out business to other professionals around them. So it's industries wide. And what we've set out to do is to make it to where it's easy for the other professionals to promote the person who's feeding them, their upstream partner. So very simple. We've built an application that allows a real estate agent to document their top professionals. They're listed inside of an app. And I want you to think about it this way, because many times when people hear this, they're like, okay, so you're asking these professionals to do you a favor. No, there's no favor being asked. You're saying, I already promote you to all of my clients. I'm now going to put it in the form of an app, because if not, they're going to go to Angie's List or Google and probably get a 3-star professional who's paid for placement versus someone who I've vetted over the years as being great, right? So we've built an app that allows a professional to list all of their preferred professionals on there at no cost to the other professionals, right? What's going to happen is that those professionals are going to start to get more business, because now they're not just relying upon you being available to tell them, and after hours, they don't want to bother you, right? Now you've given them the app. It's there for them to go access any time of the day. So your professionals are going to get more business as a result of this. Now, here's where it starts to benefit in return. Is you ask each of those professionals, you say, hey, not only do I appreciate you taking good care of my clients, but I would also love it if you would be my marketing partner. And here's what that looks like. You also become a member of the Pro Insight platform. They will equip you with the same app that you will then distribute out to your clients. Okay, so now you have the roofer, painter, plumber, HVAC company, financial advisor, estate attorney, who, by the way, all of their clients are asking for the same thing. They're saying, do you know a good CPA? Do you know a good estate attorney? Like, consumers want to know one trusted person who leads them to every other trusted person. So we've just simply built technology that aligns with that, to where now everybody has like a preferred directory that they're handing to their clients. And by the way, the real estate agent is exclusively listed inside of that directory. So now you have, call it 30 professionals who each have 500 relationships. Now you've penetrated 15,000 homes and phones, because part of our membership is we give a 4x4 adhesive sticker that sticks on the wall or inside of a cabinet inside the home that has the face of that professional and a QR code that leads back to the technology. So now you literally start to take over a community, right? And you've got all these professionals who are out helping. It's a shared lift now. Getting just 1% of a local market is very difficult for one person to do. But now if you've got 20 people helping you, you can now get 20%, right? All of a sudden, you can really expand your efforts because everybody's helping versus one person doing all the heavy lifting and everyone else waiting around for them to come back with food.
Amazing. Yeah, that is. And just to hear you explain it like that is, even the second time, it's unbelievable, really, because you're talking about, a multi-way contribution. And we're talking eventually about the customer and a high level of service and service access that can be provided by this kind of a guided professional network that is sculpted by the very people who are on it. And like you say, are already using and referring one another. I think that just the systematization of that is brilliant. And so, yeah, this is phenomenal. I wanted to also ask you, you teach that growth often comes from introspection and from being, willing to rethink the way that we've always done things. Was there, just kind of going back to any part of your career, was there a part of your career or something that forced you to step back, maybe reflect deeply, and rebuild your approach to business and leadership?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think when the building industry had a sudden shift in 2008, right? Um,
Hmm.
that forced me to do some introspection, right? And at that point in my life, it would have been probably easier for me to say, you know what? I'm just going to keep my head down, keep doing what I'm doing. And in 5 years, this will recover. What was more difficult, and that it was forced introspection, right? Because it was a painful time to be in the industry. I had asked myself, do
Absolutely.
I really love this work? Right. And I think that's a question we all have to ask ourselves is not only is this a good business opportunity, because the home building business implementing the upstream model had been a very good business model for me, but it forced me at that point to ask myself the question, not only is my wallet benefiting, but is my heart, like, is this actually work that I love? And I think when we start
Yeah.
to ask that question to where we realize that our bodies and our souls are combined, and that the fastest way to burn out is to do something that maybe is financially beneficial, but it's not heart beneficial. It doesn't enrich our soul. It's maybe not aligned with maybe a greater mission or some unique talent that we feel like we were put here to exercise and to do. And I think when we start to have that conversation, I realized really quickly my passion was not building homes and it was not developing land, although I knew how to do both proficiently. My passion was building businesses and developing people, developing them into leaders. And so that was a time for me where I really had to take a hard look and say, am I willing to give up what I've built in order to really align myself with what I feel like I was put here to do? And it wasn't an easy decision. The market made it easier, but after that, and I really started to really lean into the work that I'm doing now, it became very rewarding and it became very just aligned, right? And I think that's for everybody. It's going to be different. There are people who found alignment in the home building business. I found it outside of the home building business, but it's really that alignment where it doesn't feel like a burden. It doesn't mean it's not hard. It doesn't mean that it actually like causes you some sleepless nights, because anything worth building is gonna require a lot of you, right? So it's not this airy fairy, it's never gonna be hard, because it will be hard. It'll stretch you. If it's actually really good, it's gonna stretch you. But it should also feel like it's in alignment with unique talents, and your heart's into it, and that's, I think, worth everybody evaluating at some point, sooner than later.
That's so, yeah, absolutely wonderfully, beautifully said, to be honest. And, I've always thought you were a man who was great with words. And, I just think you drop so much wisdom on us in this last section. It's, do I really love this work? What are your unique talents? Are you aligning? I wrote down proficiency versus passion. Are you able to align with your passions? And I feel like in a way this is overused. People say, okay, I want to be passionate, because in the end, you mentioned this too, work is going to be hard. Whatever you're up to is probably going to be hard. Certain times you're going to have hard days, or even hard seasons, but acknowledging and recognizing that if it's worth building, it probably is going to challenge you, because it comes back to what so many of our coaches, and we've heard, I know you and I have heard people on stage say, all of your gains are on the other side of your discomfort. So it's like this idea that, because yes, our brain loves to be comfortable. And if you're going to gain something extraordinary, you need to be able to learn something new, do something new, behave in a different way. And that comes from, that will always come shoulder to shoulder with some discomfort. But I absolutely loved what you said about proficiency, versus passion, and aligning with your unique talents, and that we all need to kind of take a gut check and just ask. and it can change. You can have something for a few years that you start to kind of grow apart from it, and maybe your talents could be better served elsewhere. So I absolutely love
Yeah.
that. Another question that I had is, your work centers around partnerships and the idea that we don't rise alone. Who were the people in your life who helped shape the way that you lead today? And what did they teach you about influence, trust, and responsibility?
Great questions, Heather. This is such a fun conversation to be in with you. Absolutely wonderful questions. It's caused me to think back about some of the people that were very influential in my life, all the way back to a high school football coach, my mom, who built an incredible business, and the two, I would say, as I look at those um, two individuals who had tremendous influence in my life, um, first and foremost, like, they were all in on what they did, right? It's hard to have influence if you dabble in this and that. And so I hope that my previous comment in this quest for introspection doesn't cause people to say, well, it's getting hard, therefore maybe I need to go do something else for a living. No, like, that's not what I'm saying. Like, people who actually have the influence to make a big difference in people's lives typically pour their whole heart into what it is that they do. They're actually really good, right, at what they do. Secondly, they're all in on the people around them. And that's the things that I sensed about that I sense about my mom and a high school football coach that led us, by the way, to 37 wins and 1 loss in 3 years. We won 2 state championships under his leadership. And by the way, when I was an eighth grader, we lost 90-0. So, like, this was a program that was in shambles, and he brought it back from the dead. And part of it is because he was really good, but he cared about the players so much that we could feel how he felt about us. And I think that's something that I've realized, is that to be a great leader, it's not about just being proficient. It's back to what you said, Heather, which I love. It's going beyond proficiency to passion, and it's passion for not just your own wins and using other people to get a win yourself, but it's you're helping them to get what they want. And when you feel that somebody loves you enough to even have a difficult
Yeah.
conversation with you, to challenge you, and they love you enough to actually make it uncomfortable for both of you, then it's like, okay, I've got someone who
Yes.
I'm really loyal to because I know that they want what's best for me.
This is the thing. Yeah. True coaches and true love, like true parenting, has uncomfortable moments and has the tough conversations that are not fun for the coach or the parent, just as much or more so of the student or the kid or whatever. Is that understanding that you can't try for likability when you are a leader. You have to understand you're not always going to be likable, but in the end, true leadership, it won't matter, because you can make a genuine difference in someone's life. You make a genuine difference in their life. They're not going to like you. They're going to love you. They're going to love who they are in your environment. And that's the sauce. That's the thing. I want to hear a little bit more about your mom as well, because you talked about her, and I'm a mom, so I love all this. And I know we'll have plenty of moms listening. You talked about your coach, and just hearing about him, you could hear the love and the passion and the extraordinary nature of this man. Tell me how your mom was all in. Tell me how she was someone that had just a massive heart for what she was up to in her life, whether that was parenting or something else or more.
Yeah, I love that you said that. And again, I'm going to share for your audience who was not privy to our conversation before we started this recording. The way that you talked about your children tells me that you are that kind of influential mother, that, like, their victories in life are more important than your own. And I think that's actually the great sign, like the sign of a great leader, is that, again, we're not pawns in their game. Um, Rather, they exist to help remove obstacles so that we can realize our greatest potential. My mom built a company. It's kind of an interesting company. When you walk through like a Costco and you've got people passing out food samples, right? She was the staffing agency behind about 1,000 of those what are called demos, food demos, every single weekend. So she had sweet little blue haired lady that worked, sweet little blue haired ladies that worked for her all over the Northwest, and she loved these people. She loved these people, and they loved her. And so she built an amazing 7-figure business in one of the most unassuming ways. And her people loved her because they knew that she loved them. And as a mom, she would sometimes, and this is, she would look at like me and my 2 siblings, there were 3 of us, and she'd pull us in and she'd say, and it wasn't always that she'd do this because this might be overkill to do that, but she said, if something were to happen to me tomorrow, and we're always like, Mom, do you have something to tell us? She said, do my children know how much their mom loved them? And like she would like make us like look her in the eye, and she's like with teary eyed, like, and it's like, Mom, do you have something you want to share with us? She's like, no, I'm healthy, I'm fine. But if of nothing more, do my children know how much I love them? And I almost get a little misty eyed thinking about that right now because the feeling was so tangible, right? She wasn't just
Yes.
checking the box of I got to be sure that they've got food and they've got money, they've got all this stuff. Like it's like we were
Yeah.
so important to her, despite her. In addition to what she did in business, she was there for everything that mattered.
Yeah.
And more importantly, we
Oh
knew
my
that
gosh.
her greatest responsibility and her greatest honor was that of being the most impactful person in our
Your
lives,
mom.
and she still is to this day. Yeah,
Oh my gosh. I absolutely love that. And by the way, thank you for the kind words. It's, I do say, and my husband and I often say it's parenting is the greatest honor we've ever had in our lives. And, we
totally.
just hope that we are carrying it, the right way and that we're gonna mess up, but we just every day try to do better. And be up to the challenge and be up to deserving of that honor, and that's really how we look at it, and it just kinda makes all the nonsense kind of blow right past because as teenagers, there were times my boys are a little bit older now, but there were times they would say something, it just, it would hit you the wrong way, drive you crazy. But it made it inside this context of this is just another being that they're going through whatever they're going through in this moment. But my job is this greater honor of parenting. And I don't get to just be wrapped up in the emotion of whatever thing annoys me. It's I've got to be above it all. And as a boss, as a leader, I think that that has certainly been one of the greatest skills, and the fact that, your mother made a point to just repeatedly say, because how many times do we like repeatedly say that someone's doing something wrong, but we're not making the point to repeatedly say the thing that's the most caring, the most kind, maybe the thing that they're doing right, or how much you love them. I think we can all err on the wrong side of that, and as bosses, by the way, and as leaders, we can err on the wrong side of that, which is, we're giving attention to the bottom 20% of whoever's working for us because we're trying to fix them or get them going, or deal with attitude or performance issues, but we're not necessarily making sure to very clearly state when someone is being great or wonderful or performing at a high level or just doing something right, or just to say how much we care. I absolutely love that. And it sounds like your coach as well. You often say that most professionals own a job instead of owning a true business. What mindset shifts or daily disciplines helped you move from simply producing to actually building something that could grow beyond you?
Yeah, I think it really is a mindset shift, and I think it's a progression over time. That I mean, a business is a series of people, systems, and tools that like create a certain outcome. And one of the biggest flaws I think that we tend to fall into, especially when we really love a business and we love the outcome, is that we keep ourselves involved in every system, every tool, and overseeing every individual person. And I think part of that stems from maybe not empowering our people to go do their best work, right? When people rarely really spread their wings unless they're given the opportunity to do so. If we're always right there, they'll continually defer to us. And by the way, that ends up being, I think, a reason why great talent doesn't stay is because they feel like they don't experience the growth and the opportunity upside that they're looking for. And it isn't because it wasn't there,
Yeah.
it's because we didn't actually give them the autonomy to go feel that and
Yes.
experience that. And so a lot of it is just empowering people. It's making the right decisions as to who you bring in, and then having a certain standard that is managed to, right, or led to, and giving people not specific methodologies of how to get there, but this is the goal, this is the target. Check in on that regularly, and allow them to find their own creative uniqueness in how they solve for that, right? That this is what we need to accomplish. And I'm excited to see what you're going to figure out and helping us get to that, right? And staying close, but not overbearing, right? Not always overseeing everything. Of course, managing to the standard. So I think that's part of it, is just finding good people and then letting them find out just how good they are. You know, is probably the
Yes.
biggest component.
Yeah, so many good things there. And, I took a lot of notes, and it's basically, I was thinking a lot about standards recently. And a coach once said to me, okay, the difference between standards and suggestions is standards are tracked and they have a component of either reward or, some sort of compliance. And if they don't have that tracking and either reward or, taking something away, then basically they're suggestions and they're not standards. And you cannot be surprised if your organization fails to perform to them. And then I really love what you said about you mentioned it's a manage to the standards and lead to the standards. And you and I have talked about leadership in the past where, you're demonstrating, you are the example. And it's not that you have to be the only example, but if they don't have anyone to follow, and if you're not exuding what it is in the culture that you want to see, then it's just like, leading by word and not example. You can't, you have to at a certain point be able to demonstrate at least in overall leadership, what it is you're wanting. But I really love that you said, then let them creatively in their own way solve for that and find it and empower them to have that chance. And the fact that you did mention, yes, if people don't have somewhere to go, in your organization, don't be surprised if they go somewhere else. Your boat ultimately has to be big enough that they can see themselves in it, not just when they're new and not just today, but at different levels of their career, or you will leave them as they rise on out of that ship. Because this show is about women who rise, I always love to ask this from a different angle. Through your work with high level professionals and leaders, what have you learned from the women that and I'm thinking of Stephanie Peck and others that you have partnered with, coached, or worked alongside that has influenced maybe the way that you think about leadership?
Yeah, I've been fortunate to be around and be influenced by incredible women. You being one of them. Just watching what you've done with your real estate team, with your family. I'm inspired. I mean, I really am. I think women naturally are given gifts of nurturing and care and love that typically surpass that of what men are innately given. I'm not saying that they can't develop that, but I think anytime you have that that skill set, you've people typically open up to and will follow, as I described, people who they feel like genuinely have their best interests at heart. And so I think because women tend to come with more of that innate ability to nurture and to love, that I think they're primed to influence people. I would say first and foremost in the home, right? That's probably the greatest work that or the most impactful work, the longest lasting work that we'll do will be within the walls of our own home, and then extending beyond that to the others that we influence in the workplace and in the community. And I think being sure there tends to be maybe a societal pull towards being gruff and tough and not getting walked on. And I'm not saying that isn't appropriate at certain times, but I would encourage, at least what I've learned from women is that sometimes that's actually putting down your greatest superpower. I'm not saying you should be walked on. I'm not saying that you should be subservient. I'm not saying that you should bow to who, like, that's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is that one of the reason why women rule the world is because they have the ability to influence. And how do they influence? Is because they actually love and care more for people. And so more people will do what they say. And so don't leave that at the door thinking that you need to man up and put on this gruff side. It's actually embracing the God-given characteristics that you were given, which is actually care more for people and actually listen better. Because in that is where people are guided at the most important decisions in life.
I love that so much. And really, it is, I mean, true magic when someone is deeply heard, deeply felt, deeply cared for. And like you said, both men and women can absolutely do this. But there is this idea that, women seem to have a greater capacity for this nurturing, and this idea that someone in their presence can feel heard or cared for beyond just the business of the moment and the business reason that you may be standing in front of them. And because of that, like you said, they're willing to give a little more trust and consider working with them having just met them. And it is a superpower and one that, even as a female in my own business, gosh, it's taken me decades. Being in sales in my early 20s, I would try to stuff it all down as much as possible and, wear sharp suits and do all the things. But because I was in a very male dominated industry of advertising, and it took a while before I could feel that, that was accepted to also be able to have that more human side. I know that our time together is coming short, and I just wanted to ask, you teach that the biggest opportunities often don't come from working harder, but from working in the right relationships. For women or anyone listening at any aspect of their career or entrepreneurial world who want to grow maybe into leadership or build something meaningful, how should they be thinking differently about the people that they surround themselves with?
There's a great book that was introduced to me called Give and Take. And the concept of the book is that people fall into one of three categories. And it's not this simple, but you'll get the point. One is that they are
Hmm.
givers. 20% of the world, they're givers. They'll give and give and give and give. The bottom 20% are takers. They'll take and take and take, right? They're there simply to get. The middle 60% are traders. In other words, you give me and I'll give you, and we'll keep it nice and equal, right? And there's, of course, varying levels along that spectrum, right? And interestingly enough, the most successful and the least successful people in the world are usually givers. And here's why, is that givers who aren't wise enough to, are unwise in the sense that they give to takers, they give and they give and they give, and they get completely taken advantage of and taken for everything that they have. But if a giver can be wise enough to surround themselves with other givers, there's this endless collaborative pull upward that doesn't stop because everybody's trying to outgive the other person. So I would just encourage you to, number one, try and be a giver, try and show up in every environment saying, what can I give from this experience? Give to this experience. And then look for people that are the same. And if you find yourself in those circles, there's no end to the amount of value that you'll bring to the world and a value that will come back to you.
I love that so much. It really just does make perfect sense, doesn't it? It's just so clear. And it's so funny as you were saying it. I thought, you know what? I've been a giver my whole life, and I think what I wasn't certainly when I was new in having my real estate team in say 2018, I was not a wise giver. I was just a giver, and I hadn't figured out how to kind of measure and understand the give and take of things. And I just thought, well, if I just keep giving, uh, it's going to work out. And I end up, almost giving my way right out of business and had to really learn that there had to be a give and take. And then, yes, surrounding myself with other people who were willing to buy into the mission, were willing to jump in my boat and help me row. Even if, by the way, they were an ancillary business who was surrounding me as a realtor, and knowing that, they could get as well. But were willing to join in the mission and really buy into what I was building, and support it and be givers. And in fact, themselves are true givers. The collaboration from that alone, just I'm thinking of two partners in particular, my lenders, has been extraordinary and has actually allowed us to weather very hard times at times in this industry. So, Justin, I know our time is coming to an end, but I just wanted to ask you, your work challenges people to think bigger about what they're building and why they're building it. As you look ahead, what kind of legacy do you hope to leave, not just in business, but in the way people think about relationships, leadership, and the purpose behind their work?
I think first and foremost, I want my children to know that I love them. I want them to know about my love for them, about my love for God. And I also want them to have the courage to go for it. And that can oftentimes only be found by watching people around you. Number one, speak confidence into you, but also to go through challenging times and still continue to go for it. And I think, as my children have watched me grow Pro Insight, that's been a theme that it hasn't been easy, and we've now at a spot where it's really fun, right? But they saw me actually put it all on the line because I believed that my unique dent in the universe, if you will, in the professional space would be this, right? Creating this unique collaboration amongst professionals. And so I think part of that is just being sure that that they have a role model of someone who's actually going for it in life, right? Rather than living timidly.
I love that. Go for it as opposed to living timidly. And it's not something that you hear all the time, but isn't that what we are naturally, somewhat prone to do as humans is, and I like kind of the slightly like little, negative spin on it, which is timid is not the word we necessarily want to be associated with. And yet, in fact, isn't that what we just naturally want to do, but going for it in our life. And I just love that, you said, I want my children to genuinely know how much I love them. And I saw you kind of like, I could feel that because of the incredible and abundant love that you were, given and so pointedly by your mom. So, last question for you. What are the non negotiables that you believe must be in place, both internally and externally, if someone wants to build a business that actually has long term value? Something that could outlast them, be sold, or truly make an impact.
Yeah. I think it is about relationships and having the right relationships. Kind of going back to the theme of what we've created is that if it's simply transactional, people will trade you out for whatever the
Yes.
next option is. If you build value
Yes.
through relationships and relationships through value, then you're positioned to actually have a business that can be transferred. And I think what we've set out to build is that oftentimes relationship based businesses don't transfer very well because it's all tied into one relationship. So what we've created is the
Yes.
ability for a professional to have a referral relationship based business that isn't just tied to their relationships, but the relationships of an ecosystem of professionals in their community. That way, the business is built on relationships and it's transferable because it's spread across many relationships. So,
Absolutely fantastic. Well, Justin, I just want to say how much I appreciate this time with you, how much I appreciate that you took the chance to come and, give some of your amazing wisdom. I can always tell that you have such a heart for others, such a heart and passion for what you're doing. As CEO of Pro Insight, I think is absolutely extraordinary what you guys are up to. And I really do encourage our audience to reach out. We'll provide links and everything below so that you guys can learn yourselves and find that place in your business as well that's going to help you level up, provide an organization that does not need you as the sole influencer, and in fact a network that is saleable, and all of those things. So I
yeah,
know that
thanks,
our
Heather.
audience has really gained so much from your extraordinary wisdom today, and I just want to thank you so much, Justin, for being with us.
Always so good to spend time with you, Heather. Thank you. Thanks to all. I look forward to hopefully meeting some of your audience. So thank you all.
Absolutely. Thank you. Well, folks, that's it for today's podcast. Thank you so much for joining us on Women Who Rise, the success podcast for ambitious women. Today, Justin taught us many things. First of all, he wanted us to ask, do I really love this work? He talked about proficiency versus passion. If you are proficient at something and you can be passionate for a time, is it really where you belong now? Have you evolved? Has something about your abilities and your unique talents, have they evolved over time? And if so, take a moment and look at what are you passionate about and what can your unique talents bring to bear on whatever it is that's happening in your world. Secondly, he talked about standards, manage to them and lead to them. I really liked the phrase lead to them because of the fact that simply, standards are just suggestions. If you're not demonstrating, tracking, and if you don't have some sort of compliance measure in addition to keep those standards alive. He also talked about empowering others to rise and find their way. So if you are an employer, if you have people under you, you need to both show them how it's done and also give them an opportunity to creatively find their way in whatever task it is, in whatever element of that business, because it's through that empowerment that they will actually find the way that they can be truly invested in that aspect of your culture or business. 30 talked about building value in your relationships and providing value to them as well. Create and have and nurture relationships that give you value and make sure you're someone who provides that. And this really goes to his fourth and last point, which was be a giver in business. And to be wise at giving, you should also look for others that are also givers and that do the same. He mentioned that there was a study done and that in fact the highest and least income producing people among us are in the percentage that are givers. And so the reason for that was that some people are just going to give and give themselves bankrupt really and get to a point where they are not able to sustain whatever business that is because they are so focused on giving. But he talked about being a wise giver, which I absolutely loved. And he talked about making sure that you also are seeking other givers, that you're surrounding yourself with people who are similar and have a like-minded approach to business, because then you can collaborate. And when you can collaborate as a giver with other people that are also having that capacity to add value, then he said your growth is just exponential together. So please visit our website to find our episode guide and worksheet that will help you use these tips to take action in your own life. Like and subscribe and join us everywhere podcasts are streamed. We can't wait to bring you more incredible content every week so that you can rise in your own lives and careers. Again, thank you so much. Heather Mansy, signing off.